On this video, I'm going to carry on reading from Ralph Waldo Emerson's book, The Complete Essays and Other Writings. This particular writing is about becoming friends with the spirit that lives inside of you and allowing it to become your essence and your sense of self, and not to be afraid of the environment, afraid of other people, not to be reliant on other people, dependent on different beliefs which sway people to forget themselves. Please leave your feedback, your thoughts, your comments, your insights. I look forward to seeing it. It means a lot to me. What do you think of my style of reading? Feel free to share your thoughts, your comments, and please feel free to let me know what parts I've read to you which resonate with you. And also please do subscribe if you haven't already. Subscribe to my amazing channel, Jessica Maiden, on YouTube. It's much appreciated. It means a lot to me. Please smash the like button. I look forward to hearing from you. I shall carry on. Another sort of false prayers are our regrets. Discontent is the want of self-reliance. It is infirmity of will, regret, calamities. If you can thereby help the sufferer, if not attend your own work, and already the evil begins to be repaired. Our sympathy is just as base. We come to them who weep foolishly and sit down and cry for our company, instead of imparting to them truth and health in rough electric shocks, putting them once more in communication with their own reason. The secret of fortune is joy in our hands. Welcome evermore to gods and men in the self-helping man. For him all doors are flung wide, him all tongues greet, all honors crown, all eyes follow with desire. Our love goes out to him and embraces him because he did not need it. We solicitously and apologetically caress and celebrate him because he held on his way and scorned our disapprobation. The gods love him because men hated him. To the preserving mortal, said Zoroaster, the blessed immortals are swift. As men's prayers are a disease of the will, so are their creeds a disease of the intellect. They say with those foolish Israelites, let not God speak to us, lest we die. Speak thou, speak any man with us, and we will obey. Everywhere I am hindered of meeting God in my brother, because he has shut his own temple doors and recites fables merely of his brothers or his brother's God. Every new mind is a new classification. If it prove a mind of uncommon activity and power, a lucky, a Lavoisier, a Houghton, a Bentham, a Fourier, it imposes its classification on other men. And so the number of the objects it touches and brings within reach of the pupil is his complacency. But chiefly is his apparent in creeds and churches, which are also classifications of some powerful mind acting on the elemental thought of duty and man's relation to the highest, such as Calvinism, Quakerism, Swedenborgism. The pupil takes the same delight in subordinating everything in the new terminology as a girl who has just learned botany and seeing a new earth and new seasons. I think there was a new Karth. Perhaps it's new earth. I'm not entirely sure. A new season thereby. I will happen for a time that the pupil will find his intellectual power has grown by the study of his master's mind. But in all unbalanced minds, the classification is idolized, passes for the end, and not very speedily exhaustible means, so that the walls of the system blend to their eye in the remote horizon with the walls of the universe. The luminaries of heaven seem to them hung on the arch the master built. They cannot imagine how you aliens have any right to see. How you can see. It must be somehow that you stole the light from us. They do not yet perceive that light, unsystematic, indomitable, will break into any cabin, even into theirs. Let them chirp a while and call it their own. If they are honest and do well, presently their neat new pinfold will be too straight and low, will crack, will lean, will rot and vanish. And the mortal light, all young and joyful, million-orbed, million-colored, will beam over the universe as on the first morning. It is for want of self-culture that the superstition of traveling, whose idols are Italy, England, Egypt, retains its fascination for all educated Americans. They who made England, Italy, or Greece venerable in imagination did so by sticking fast where they were, like an axis of the earth. In manly hours, we feel that duty is our place. The soul is no traveler. The wise man stays at home, and when his necessities, his duties, on any occasion call him from his house or into foreign lands, he is at home still, and shall make men sensible by the expression of his countenance that he goes. The missionary of wisdom and virtue, and visits cities and men like a sovereign, and not like an interloper or a valet. I have no churlish objection to the circumnavigation of the globe, for the purpose of art of study and benevolence, so that man is first domesticated, or does not go abroad with the hope of finding somewhat greater than he knows. He who travels to be amused, or to get somewhat which he does not carry, travels away from himself, and grows old even in youth among old things. In Thebes, in Palmyra, his will and mind have become old and dilapidated as they. He carries ruins to ruins. Traveling is a foolish paradise. Our first journeys discover to us the indifference of places. At home I dream that at Naples, at Rome, I can be intoxicated with beauty and lose my sadness. I pack my trunk, embrace my friends, embark on the sea, and at last wake up in Naples. And there beside me is the stern fact, the sad self unrelenting, identical, that I fled from. I seek the Vatican and the palaces. I affect to be intoxicated with sights and suggestions, but I am not intoxicated. My giant goes with me wherever I go. 3. But the rage of traveling is a symptom of a deeper unsoundedness, affecting the whole intellectual action. The intellect is vagabond, and our system of education fosters restlessness. Our minds travel when our bodies are forced to stay at home. We imitate. And what is imitation but the traveling of the mind? Our houses are built with foreign taste. Our shelves are garnished with foreign ornaments. Our opinions, our tastes, our faculties lean and follow the past and the distant. The soul created the arts wherever they have flourished. It was in his own mind that the artist sought his model. It was an application of his own thought to the thing to be done and the conditions to be observed. And why need we copy the Doric or the Gothic model? Beauty, convenience, grandeur of thoughts and quaint expression are as near to us as to any. And if the American artist will study with hope and love the precise thing to be done by him, considering the climate, the soil, the length of the day, the wants of the people, the habit and form of the government, he'll create a house in which all these will find themselves fitted, and taste and sentiment will be satisfied. also. Insist on yourself. Never imitate. Your own gift you can present every moment with the cumulative force of a whole life's cultivation, but of the adopted talent of another. You have only an extemporaneous half possession. That which each can do best, none but his maker can teach him. No man yet knows what it is, nor can tell that person has exhibited it. Where is the master who could have taught Shakespeare? Where is the master who could have instructed Franklin, or Washington, or Bacon, or Newton? Every great man is a unique. The Scipionism of Scipio is precisely that part he could not borrow. Shakespeare will never be made by the study of Shakespeare. Do that which is assigned you, and you cannot hope too much or dare too much. There is at this moment for you an utterance brave and grand as that of the colossal chisel of Phidias, or trowel of the Egyptian, or the pen of Moses or Dante. But different from all these, not possibly will the soul, all rich, all eloquent, with thousand cloven tongue, deign to repeat itself. But if you can hear what these patriarchs say, surely you can reply to them in the same pitch of voice. For the ear and the tongue are two organs of the nature. Abide in the simple and noble regions of thy life, obey thy heart, and thou shalt reproduce the foreworld again. For as our religion, our education, our art look abroad, so does our spirit of society. All men plumb themselves on the improvement of society, and no man improves. Society never advances. It reduces as fast on one side as it gains on the other. It undergoes continual changes. It is barbarous. It is civilized. It is Christianized. It is rich. It is scientific. But this change is not amelioration. For everything that is given, something is taken. Society acquires new arts, loses old instincts. What a contrast between the well-clad, reading, writing, thinking American with a watch, pencil, and a bill exchange in his pocket, and the naked New Zealander whose property is a club, a spear, a mat, and an undivided 20th of a shed to sleep under. But compare the health of the two men, and you shall see that the white man has lost his aboriginal strength. If the traveler tell us truly, strike the savage with a broad axe, and in a day or two, the flesh shall unite and heal as if you struck the blow into the soft pitch, and the same blow shall send the white to his grave. The civilized man has built a coach, but has lost the use of his feet. He is supported on crutches, but lacks so much supportive muscle. He has a fine Geneva watch, but he fails of the skill to tell the hour by the sun. A Greenwich nautical almanac he has, and so being sure of the information when he wants it, the man in the street does not know a star in the sky. The solstice he does not observe. The equinox he knows as little. And the whole bright calendar of the year is without a dial in his mind. His notebooks impair his memory. His libraries overload his wit. The insurance office increases the number of accidents, and it may be a question whether machinery does not encumber. Whether we have not lost by refinement some energy, by a Christianity entrenched in establishments and forms, some vigor of wild virtue. For every Stoic was a Stoic, but in Christendom, where is a Christian? For every Stoic was a Stoic, but in Christendom, where is the Christian? There's no more deviation in the moral standard than in the standard of height or bulk. No greater men are now than ever were a singular equality. No greater men are now than ever were. A singular equality may be observed between the great men of the first and of the last ages. nor can all the science, art, religion, and philosophy of the 19th century avail to educate greater men than Plutarch's hero, 3 or 4 and 20 centuries ago. Not in time is the race progressive. Phocion, Socrates, Anaxagoras, Digenes are great men, but they leave no class. He who is really of their class will not be called by their name, but will be his own name, and in his turn, the founder of his sect. The arts and inventions of each period are only its costume, and do not invigorate men. The harm of the improved machinery may compensate its good. Hudson and Bering accomplished so much in their fishing boats as to astonish Parry and Franklin, whose equipment exhausted the resources of science and art. Galileo, with an opera class, discovered a more splendid series of celestial phenomena than anyone since. Columbus found the New World in an undecked boat. It is curious to see the periodical disuse and perishing of means and machinery which were introduced with loud laudation a few years or centuries before. The great genius returns to essential man. We reckon the improvements of the art of war among the triumphs of science. Yet Napoleon conquered Europe by the bivouac, which consists of falling back on naked valor, and this encumbering it of all aids. The emperor held it impossible to make a perfect army, says Les Cases, without abolishing our arms, magazines, commissaries, and carriages, until, in imitation of the Roman custom, the soldier shall receive his supply of corn, grind it in his hand, mill and bake his bread himself. Society is a wave. The wave moves onward, but the water of which it is composed does not. The same principle does not rise from the valley of the ridge to the ridge. Its unity is only phenomenal. The persons who make up a nation today, next year die, and their experiences die with them. So the reliance on property, including the reliance on governments which protect it, is the want of self-reliance. Men have looked away from themselves and at things so long that they have come to esteem the religious, learned, and civil institutions as guards of property, and they deprecate assaults on these because they feel them to be assaults on property. They measure their esteem of each other by what each has, and not by what each is. But a cultivated man becomes ashamed of his property, out of new respect for his nature. Especially he hates what he has, if he see that it is accidental, came to him by inheritance, or gift, or crime. Then he feels that it is not having. It does not belong to him, has no root in him, and merely lies there because no revolution or no robber takes it away. But that which a man is does always by necessity acquire. And what the man acquires is living property, which does not wait the beck of rulers or mobs or revolutions or firestorm or bankruptcies, but perpetually renews itself whenever the man breathes. Thy lot or portion of life, said the Caliph Ali, is seeking after thee. Therefore, be at rest from seeking after it. Our dependence on these foreign goods leads us to our slavish respect for numbers. The political parties meet in numerous conventions. The greater the concourse, and with each new uproar of announcement, the delegation from Essex, the Democrats from New Hampshire, the Whigs of Maine, the young patriot feels himself stronger than before, by a new thousand of eyes and arms. In like manner, The reformers summon conventions and vote and resolve the multitude. Not so, O friends, with the God deign to enter and inhabit you, but by a method precisely the reverse. It is only a man puts off all foreign support and stands alone, that I see him to be strong and to prevail. He is weaker by every recruit to his banner. Is not a man better than a town? Ask nothing of men, and in the endless mutation, that only firm column must presently appear the upholder of all that surrounds thee. He who knows that power is inborn, that he is weak because he has looked for good out of him and elsewhere, and so perceiving throws himself unhesitatingly on his thoughts, instantly rights himself, stands in the erect position, commands his limbs, works miracles, just as a man who stands on his feet is stronger than a man who stands on his head. So use all that is called fortune. Most men gamble with her and gain all and lose all as her wheel rolls. But do thou leave as unlawful these winnings and deal with cause and effect, the chances of God. In the will work and acquire, and thou hast chained the wheel of chance, and shall sit hereafter out of fear from her rotations. A political victory, a rise of rents, the recovery of your sick, the return of your absent friend, or some other favorable event raises your spirits, and you think good days are preparing for you. Do not believe it. Nothing can bring you peace but yourself. Nothing can bring you peace but the triumph of principles. Compensation. The wings of time are black and white, peer with morning and with night. Mountain tall and ocean deep, triumphing balance duly keep. In changing moon, in tidal wave, glows a feud of want and have. Gorge of more and less through space, a lecture star and pencil plays to lonely earth amid the balls that hurry through the eternal halls. A make-weight flying to the void, supplemental asteroid, or compensatory spark shoots across the neutral dark. Man's the elm and wealth the vine, stanch and strong the tendrils twine. Though the frail wrinkles they deceive, none from its stock that vine can reave. Fear not, then, thou child infirm. There is no God, dear wrong in a worm. Laurel crowns cleave to deserts, and power to him who power exerts. Hast not thy share, O winged feet? Lo, it rushes thee to meet. And all that nature made thy own, floating in air or pent in stone, will rise the hills and swim the sea, and like the shadow, follow thee. Follow thee. Ever since I was a boy, I wished to write a discourse on compensation. For it seemed to me, when very young, that on this subject life was ahead of theology, and that people knew more than the preachers taught. The documents, too, from which the doctrine is to be drawn, charm my fancy by their endless variety, and lay always before me, even in sleep. For they are the tools in our hands, the bread in our basket, the transactions of the street, the farm and the dwelling house, greeting relations, debts and credits, the influence of character, the nature and endowment of all men. It seemed to me, also, that in it might be shown men a ray of divinity, the present action of the soul of this world, clean from all vestige of tradition, And so the heart of man might be bathed by an inundation of eternal love. Conversing with that which he knows was always and always must be, because it really is now. It appeared, moreover, that if this doctrine could be stated in terms with any resemblance to those bright institutions in which this truth is sometimes revealed to us, it would be a star in many dark hours and crooked passages in our journey. That would not suffer us to lose our way. It was lately confirmed in these desires by hearing a sermon at church. The preacher, a man esteemed for his orthodoxy, unfolded in the ordinary manner of the doctrine of last judgment. He assumed that judgment is not executed in this world, that the wicked are successful, that the good are miserable, and then urged from reason and from Scripture a compensation to be made to both parties in the next life. No offense appeared to be taken by the congregation at this doctrine. As far as I could observe, when the meeting broke up, they separated without remark on the sermon. Yet, what was the import of this teaching? What did the preacher mean by saying that the good are miserable in the present life? Was it that houses and lands, offices, wine, horses, dress luxury are had by unprincipled men, whilst the saints are poor and despised, and that a compensation is to be made to these last hereafter by giving them the like gratifications, another day bank stock and doubloons, venison and champagne? This must be the compensation intended. For what else? Is it that they are to have leave? Is it that they are to have leave to pray and praise, to love and serve men? Why, that they can do now. The legitimate inference the disciple would draw was, we are to have such a good time as the sinners have now. Or to push it to extreme import, you sin now, we shall sin by and by. We would sin now if we could. Not being successful, we expect our revenge tomorrow. The fallacy lay in the men's concession that the bad are successful, that justice is not done now. The blindness of the preacher consisted in deferring to the base estimate of the market of what constitutes a manly success, instead of confronting and convicting the world from the truth, announcing the presence of the soul, the omnipotence of the will, and so establishing a standard of good and ill, of success and falsehood. I had a similar bass tone in the popular religious works of the day, and the same doctrines assumed by the literary men when occasionally they treat the related topics. I think that our popular theology has gained in decorum, and not in principle, over the superstitions it has displaced. Both men are better than their theology. Their daily lives gives it the lie. Every ingenious and aspiring soul leaves the doctrine behind him in his own experience, and all men feel sometimes the falsehood which they cannot demonstrate. For men are wiser than they know. That which they hear in school and pulpits without afterthought, if said in conversation, would probably be questioned in silence. If a man dogmatize in a mixed company on providence and the divine laws, he is answered by a silence which conveys well enough to an observer the dissatisfaction of the hearer, but his incapacity to make his own statement. I shall attempt in this and the following chapter to record some facts that indicate the path of the law of compensation. Happy beyond my expectation, if I shall truly draw the smallest arc of the circle. Polarity or action and reaction we meet in every part of nature. in darkness and light, in heat and cold, in the ebb and flow of waters, in male and female, in the inspiration and expiration of plants and animals, in the equation of quantity and quality, in the fluids of the animal body, in the systole and diastole of the heart, in the undulations of fluids and of sound, in the centrifugal and centripetal gravity, in electricity, galvanism, and chemical affinity. Superinduced magnetism at one end of a needle, opposite magnetism takes place at the other end. If the south attracts, the north repels. To empty here, you must condense there. An inevitable dualism bisects nature so that each thing is a half, and suggests another thing to make it whole, as spirit, matter, man, woman. Odd, even. Subjective, objective. In, out, upper, under, motion, rest, yea, nay. Whilst the world is thus dual, so is every one of its parts. The entire system of things gets represented in every particle. There is somewhat that resembles the ebb and flow of the sea, day and night. Man and woman in a single needle of the pine, in a kernel of corn, in each individual of every animal tribe. The reaction so grand in the elements is repeated within these small boundaries. For example, in the animal kingdom, the physiologist has observed that no creatures are favorites, but a certain compensation balances every gift and every defect. A surplusage given to one part is paid out of a reduction from another part of the same creature. If the head and neck are enlarged, the trunk and extremities are cut short. The theory of the mechanic forces is another example. What we gain in power is lost in time, and the converse. The periodic or compensating errors of the planets is another instance. The influences of climate and soil and political history is another. The cold climate invigorates. The barren soil does not breed fevers, crocodiles, tigers, or scorpions. Same dualism underlies the nature and condition of man. Every excess causes a defect, every defect an excess. Every sweet hath its sour, every evil is good. Every faculty which is a receiver of pleasure has an equal penalty put on its abuse. It is to answer for its moderation with its life. For every grain of wit, there's a grain of folly. For everything you have missed, you have gained something else. And for everything you gain, you lose something. If riches increase, they are increased that use them. If the gatherer gathers too much, nature takes out of the man what she puts into his chest. Swells the estate, but kills the owner. Nature hates monopolies and exceptions. The waves of the sea do not more speedily seek a level from the loftiest tossing than the varieties of conditions tend to equate themselves. There's always some leveling circumstance that puts down the overbearing, the strong, the rich, the fortunate substantially on the same ground with all others. Is a man too strong and fierce for society, and by temper and position a bad citizen? A Moorish ruffian with a dash of the pirate in him? Nature sends him a troop of pretty sons and daughters who are getting along in the dame's class at the village school, and love and fear for them. Smooth his grim scowl the courtesy that she contrives to iterate the granite and feldspar, takes the boar out and puts the lamb in, and keeps her balance true. The farmer imagines power and place are fine things, but the president has paid dear for his White House. It has commonly cost him all his peace and the best of his manly attributes. Let's repeat that. The farmer imagines power and place of fine things, but the president has paid dear for his White House. It has commonly cost him all his peace and the host of his manly attributes. To preserve for a short time so conspicuous an appearance before the world, he is content to eat dust before the real masters, who stand erect behind each throne. Or do men desire the more substantial and permanent grandeur of genius? Neither has this an immunity. He who by force or will or a thought is great and overlooks thousands has the charges of that eminence. With every index of light comes a new danger. Has he light? He must be a witness to the light, and always outrun that sympathy which gives him such keen satisfaction. By his fidelity to new revelations of the incessant soul, he must hate father and mother, wife and child. Has he all that the world loves and admires and covets? He must cast behind him their admiration and afflict them by faithfulness to his truth, and become a byword and a hissing. The law writes the laws of cities and nations. It is in vain to build or plot or combine against it. Things refuse to be mismanaged. Long. Res nolunt dix male administrari. Though no checks to a new evil appear, the checks exist and will appear. If the government is cruel, the governor's life is not safe. If you tax too high, the revenue will yield nothing. If you make the criminal code sanguinary, juries will not convict. If the law is too mild, private vengeance comes in. If the government is a terrific democracy, the pressure is resisted by an overcharge of energy in the citizen, and life grows with a fiercer flame. The true life and satisfactions of men seem to elude the utmost rigors of felicities of condition, and to establish themselves with great indifferency under all varieties of circumstances, under all governments. The influence of character remains the same. In Turkey and in New England, about alike. Under the primeval despots of Egypt, history honestly confesses that man must have been as free as culture could make him. These appearances indicate the fact that the universe is represented in every one of its particles. Everything in nature contains all the powers of nature. Everything is made of one hidden stuff. As a naturalist sees one type under every metamorphosis, and regards a horse as a stunning man, a fish as a swimming man, a bird as a flying man, a tree as a rooted man. Each new form repeats not only the main character of the type, but part for part all the details, all the aims, furtherances, hindrances, energies, and whole system of every other. Every occupation, trade, art, transport, transaction is compend of the world and a correlative of every other. Each one is an entire emblem of human life, of its good and ill, its trials, its enemies, its course and its end, and each one must somehow accommodate the whole man and recite all his destiny. The world globe itself, and a drop of dew, the microscope cannot find the animalcule, which is less perfect for being little. Eyes, ears, taste, smell, motion, resistance, appetite, and the organs of reproduction that takes hold on eternity. All find room to consist in the small creature. So do we put our life into every act. The true doctrine of omnipresence is that God appears with all his parts in every moss and cobweb. The value of the universe contrives to throw itself into every point. If the good is there, so is the evil. If the affinity, so the repulsion. If the force, so the limitation. Thus is the universe alive. All things are moral. The soul which within us is a sentiment outside of us is a law. We feel its inspiration, but there in history we can see its fatal strength. Quote, "It is in the world, and the world was made by it." End quote. Justice is not postponed. A perfect equity adjusts its balance in all parts of life. El Yao Ev. That seems like Greek to me. The dice of God are always loaded. The world looks like a multiplication table or a mathematical equation, which turn it how you will. Balances itself. Take what figures you will. Its exact value, no more, no less, still returns to you. Every secret is told. Every crime is punished. Every virtue rewarded. Every wrong redressed. In silence and certainty. What we call retribution is the universal necessity by which the whole appears wherever a part appears. If you see smoke, there must be fire. If you see a hand or a limb, you know that the trunk to which it belongs is there behind. Every act rewards itself, or in other words, integrates itself in a twofold manner. First in the thing or in real nature, and secondly in the circumstance or in apparent nature. Men call the circumstance the retribution. The causal retribution is in the thing and is seen by the soul. The retribution is a circumstance, is seen by the understanding. It is inseparable from the thing, but is often spread over a long time, and so does not become distinct until after many years. The specific stripes may follow late after the offense, but they follow because they accompany it. Crime and punishment grow out of the stem. Punishment is a fruit that unsuspected ripens within the flower of the pleasure which concealed it. Cause and effect means and ends. Seed and fruit cannot be severed, for the effect already blooms in the cause. The end pre-exists in the means, the fruit and the seed. Whilst thus the world will be whole and refuses to be disparted, we seek to act partially, to sunder, to appropriate, for example, to gratify the senses. We sever the pleasure of the senses from the needs of the character. The ingenuity of man has always been dedicated to the solution of one problem. How to detach the sensual sweet, the sensual strong, the sensual bright, etc., from the moral sweet, the moral deep, the moral fear that is, again, to contrive to cut clean off this upper surface to so thin as to leave it bottomless, to get a one end without an other end. Soul says, eat. The body would feast. The soul says, that man and woman shall be one flesh and one soul. The body would join the flesh only. The soul says, have dominion over all things to the ends of virtue. The body would have the power over things to its own ends. The soul strives, amain, to live and work through all things. It would be the only fact. All things shall be added unto it. Power, pleasure, knowledge, beauty. The particular man aims to be somebody, to set up for himself, to truck and higgle for private good, and in particular, to ride that he may ride, to dress that he may be dressed, to eat that he may eat, and to govern that he may be seen. Men seek to be great. Sorry about the yawning. Men seek to be great. They would have offices, wealth, power, and fame. They think that to be great is to possess one side of nature, the sweet, without the other side, the bitter. The dividing and detaching is steadily counteracted. Up to this day, it must be owned, no projector has had the smallest success. The part of water reunites behind our hand. Pleasure is taken out of a pleasant thing. Profit out of profitable things. Power out of strong things. As soon as we seek to separate them from the whole, we can no more have things and get the sensual good by itself. Then we can get an inside that shall have no outside, or a light without a shadow. Drive out nature with a fork. She comes running back. Life invests itself with inevitable conditions, which the universe seek to dodge. Which one and another brags that he does not know, that they do not touch him. But the brag is on his lips, the conditions are in his soul. If he escapes them in one part, they attack him in another, or vital part. If he has escaped them in form and in their appearance, it is because he has resisted his life and fled from himself. And the retribution is so much death. So signal is the failure of all attempts to make his separation of the good from the tax. Well, the experiment would not be tried, since to try it is to be mad. But the circumstance that when these began in the will, of rebellion and separation, the intellect is at once infected, so that the man ceases to see God whole in each object, but is able to see the sensual allurement of an object and not see the sensual hurt. He sees the mermaid's head, but not the dragon's tail, and thinks he can cut off that which he would have from that which he would not have. How secret art thou, who dwellest in the highest heavens in silence, O thou only great God, sprinkling with an unwearied providence certain penal blindness upon such as have unbridled desires. The human soul is true to these facts in the painting of fable, of history, of law, of proverbs, of conversation. It finds a tongue in literature unawares. Thus the Greeks called Jupiter supreme mind, but having traditionally ascribed to him many base actions, they involuntarily made amends to reason by tying up the hands of so bad a god. He is made as helpless as a king of England. Prometheus knows one secret which Jove must bargain for, Minerva another. He cannot get his own thunders. Minerva keeps the key of them. Quote, of all the gods, I only know the keys that ope the solid doors within whose vaults his thunders sleep. End quote. A plain confession of the inworking of the all and of its moral aim, the Indian mythology ends in the same ethics, and it would seem impossible for any fable to be invented and key any currency which was not moral. Aurora forgot to ask youth for her lover. And though Tithonus is immortal, he's old. Achilles is not quite invulnerable. Sacred waters did not wash the heel by which Thetis held him. Siegfried in the Nibelungen is not quite immortal, for a leaf fell on his back whilst he was bathing in the dragon's blood, and that spot which is covered is mortal. And so it must be. There's a crack in everything God has made. It would seem that there's always this vindictive circumstance stealing in an unawareness, even in the wild poesy in which the human fancy attempted to make bold holiday and to shake itself free of the old laws. This backstroke, this kick of the guns, certifying that the law is fatal, that in nature nothing can be given, and all things are sold. That is the ancient doctrine of Nemesis, who keeps watch in the universe, and lets no offense go unchastised. The furies, they said, are attendants on justice, and if the sun in heaven should transgress his path, they would punish him. The poets related that stone walls and iron swords, 11 tongues had an occult sympathy with the wrongs of their owners, but the belt which Ajax gave Hector dragged the Trojan hero over the field at the wheels of the car of Achilles. And the sword which Hector gave Ajax was that on whose point Ajax fell. They recorded that when Thesians erected a statue to Theaginus, a victor in the games, one of his rivals went to it by night and endeavored to throw it down by repeated blows, until at last he moved it from its pedestal and was crushed to death beneath its fall. The voice of fable has in it somewhat divine. It came from thought above the will of the writer. That is the best part of each writer, which has nothing private in it. That which he does not know, that which flowed out of his constitution and not from his too active invention, that which in the study of a single artist you might not easily find, but in the study of many you would abstract as the spirit of them all. Phidias it is not, but the work of man in the early Hellenic world that I would know. The name and circumstance of Phidias, however, convenient for his history, embarrass when we come to the highest criticism. We ought to see that which man was tending to do in a given period, and was hindered, or if he will be modified in doing, by the interfering volitions of Phidias, of Dante, of Shakespeare, but organ whereby man at the moment wrought. Still more striking is the expression of this fact in the proverbs of all nations, which are always literature of reason, or the statements of an absolute truth without qualification. Proverbs, like the sacred books of each nation, are the sanctuary of the institutions. That which a droning world, chained to appearances, will not allow That which a droning world, chained to appearances, will not allow the realist to say in his own words, it will suffer him to say in Proverbs without contradiction. And this law of laws, which the pulpit, the Senate, and the college deny, is hourly preached in all markets and workshops by flights of proverbs, whose teaching is as true and as omnipresent as that of birds and flies. All things are double, one against another, tit for tat, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, blood for blood, measure for measure, love for love. Give, and it shall be given you. He that watereth shall be watered himself. What will you have? Quoth God, pay for it and take it. Nothing venture, nothing have. Thou shalt be paid exactly for what thou hast done, no more, no less. Who doth not work shall not eat. Harm watch, harm catch. Curses always recoil on the head of him who imprecates them. If you put a chain around the neck of a slave, the other end fastens itself around your own. Bad counsel confounds adviser. The devil is an ass. It is thus written because it is thus in life. Our action is overmastered and characterized above our will by the law of nature. We aim at a petty and quite aside from the public good, but our act, for that matter, arranges itself by irresistible magnetism and in line with the poles of the world. And man cannot speak, but he judges himself with his will or against his will. He draws his portrait to the eye of his companions by every word. Every opinion reacts on whim who utters it. It is a thread ball thrown at a mark, but the other end remains in the thrower's bag. Or rather, it is a harpoon hurled at the whale, unwinding as it flies. A coil of cords in the boat, and if the harpoon is not good or not well thrown, it will go nigh to cut the steersman in twain or to sink the boat. You cannot do wrong without suffering wrong. No man had ever a point of pride that was not injurious to him, said Burke. The exclusive in fashionable life does not see that he excludes himself from enjoyment and attempt to appropriate it. The exclusionist in religion does not see that he shuts the door of heaven on himself and striving to shut out others. Treat men as pawns and ninepins, and you shall suffer as well as they. If you leave out their heart, you shall lose your own. The senses would make things of all persons, of women, of children, of the poor. The vulgar proverb, quote, I will get it from his purse or get it from his skin, end quote, is sound philosophy. All infractions of love and equity in our social relations are speedily punished. They are punished by fear, whilst I stand in simple relations to my fellow man. I have no displeasure in meeting him. We meet as waters meet waters, or as two currents of air mixed with perfect diffusion and interpenetration of nature. But as soon as there is any departure from simplicity, an attempt at halfness, a good for me that is not good for him, my neighbor feels wrong. He shrinks from me as far as I have shrunk from him. His eyes no longer seek mine. There is war between us. There is hate in him and fear in me. All the old abuses in society, universal and particular, all unjust accumulations of property and power, are avenged in the same manner. Fear is an instructor of great sagacity and the herald of all revolutions. One thing he teaches, that there is rottenness where he appears. He is a carrion crow, and though you see not well what he hovers for, there is death somewhere. Our property is timid, our laws are timid, our cultivated classes are timid. Fear for ages has boded and mouthed and gibbered over government and property. That obscene bird is not there for nothing. He indicates great wrongs which must be revised. Other like nature is that expectation of change which instantly follows the suspension of our voluntary activity. The terror of cloudless noon, the emeralds of polycrates, the ore of prosperity, the instinct which leads every generous soul to impose on itself, tasks a noble asceticism and vicarious virtue, are the tremblings of the balance of justice through the heart and mind of man. Experienced men of the world know very well that it is best to pay scot and lot as they go along, and that a man often pays dear for a small frugality. The borrower runs in his own debt. Has a man gained anything who has received 100 favors and rendered none? Has he gained by borrowing? Through indolence or cunning? His neighboring wares or horses or money? There arises on the deed the instant acknowledgement of benefit on the one part and of debt on the other. That is superiority and inferiority. Let me repeat that. There arises on the deeds the instant acknowledgement of benefit on the one part and of debt on the other. That is superiority and inferiority. The transaction remains in the memory of himself and his neighbor, and every new transaction alters according to its nature their relation to each other. He may soon come to see that he had better have broken his own bones than to have ridden in his neighbor's coach. At the highest price he can pay for a thing is to ask for it. A wise man will extend this lesson to all parts of life and know that it is the part of prudence to face every claimant and pay every just demand on your time, your talents, or your heart. Always pay, for first or last, you must pay your entire debt. Persons and events may stand for a time between you and justice, but it is only a postponement. You must pay, at last, your own debt. If you are wise, you will dread a prosperity which only loads you with more. Benefit is the end of nature, but for every benefit which you receive, a tax is levied. He is great who confers the most benefits. He is base, and that is the one base thing in the universe, to receive favors and render none. In the order of nature, we cannot render benefits to those from whom we receive them, or only seldom. But the benefits we receive must be rendered again, line for line, deed for deed, cent for cent, to somebody. Beware of too much good staying in your hand. It will fast corrupt and worm worms. Paid away quickly in some sort. Labors are watched over by the same pitiless law. Cheapest say, the prudent is the dearest labor. What we buy in a broom, a mat, a wagon, a knife, is some application of good sense to a common want. It is best to pay in your land a skillful gardener, or to buy good sense applied to gardening. And your sailor, good sense applied to navigation, and the house, good sense applied to cooking, sewing, serving, and your agent, good sense applied to accounts and affairs. So do you multiply your presence or spread yourself throughout your estate. But because of the dual constitution of things, and labor, as in life, there can be no cheating. The thief steals from himself. The swindler swindles himself. For the real price of labor is knowledge and virtue, whereof wealth and credit are signs. These signs, like paper money, may be counterfeited or stolen, but that which they represent, namely knowledge and virtue, cannot be counterfeited or stolen. These ends of labor cannot be answered but by real extensions of the mind and in obedience to pure motives. The cheat, the defaulter, the gambler cannot extort the knowledge of material and moral nature which his honest care and pains yield to the operative. The law of nature is, do the thing, and you shall have the power. But they who do not the thing have not the power. Human labor, through all its forms, from the sharpening of a stake to the construction of a city or an epic, is one immense illustration of the perfect compensation of the universe, the absolute balance of give and take, the doctrine that everything has its price, and if that price is not paid, not that thing but something else is obtained, and that it is impossible to get anything without its price, is not less sublime in the columns of a ledger than in the budgets of states, in the laws of light and darkness, in all the action and reaction of nature. I cannot doubt that the high laws with which each man sees implicated, in those processes with which he is conversant, the stern ethics which sparkle on his chisel edge, which are measured out by his plumb and foot rule, which stand as manifest in the footing of the shop bell, as in the history of a state, to recommend to him his trade, and though seldom named, exalt his business to his imagination. The league between virtue and nature engages all things to assume a hostile front to vice. The beautiful laws and substances of the world persecute and whip the traitor. He finds that things are arranged for truth and benefit, but there is no den in the wide world to hide a rogue. Commit a crime, and the earth is made of glass. Commit a crime, and it seems as if a coat of snow fell on the ground, such as reveals in the woods the crack of every partridge and fox and squirrel and mole. You cannot recall the spoken word. You cannot swipe out the foot track. You cannot draw up the ladder so as to leave no inlet or clue. Some damning circumstances always transpires. The laws and substances of nature, water, snow, wind, gravitation, become penalties to the thief. On the other hand, the law holds with equal sureness for all right action. Love, and you shall be loved. All love is mathematically just, as much as the two sides of an algebraic equation. The good man has absolute good, which, like fire, turns everything to its nature. So you cannot do him any harm, but as the royal army sent against Napoleon, when he approached, cast down their colors, and from enemies became friends. So disasters of all kinds, as sickness, offense, poverty, prove benefactors. Quote, winds blow and waters roll, strength to the brave and power and deity, yet in themselves are nothing. End quote. The good are befriended even by weakness and defect, as no man had ever a point of pride that was not injurious to him. So no man had ever a defect that was not somewhere made useful to him. The stag in the fable admired his horns and blamed his feet, but when the hunter came, his feet saved him. And after his caught in the thicket, his horns destroyed him. Every man in his lifetime needs to thank his faults, as no man thoroughly understands the truth until he has contended against it. Until he has contended against it. So no man has a thorough acquaintance with the hindrances or talents of men until he has suffered from the one and seen the triumph of the other over his own want of the same. He has a defect of temper that unfits him to live in society. I hereby he is driven to entertain himself alone and acquires habits of self-help, and thus, like the wounded oyster, he mends his shell with pearl. Our strength grows out of our weakness. The indignation which arms itself with secret forces does not awaken until we are prickled and stung and sorely assailed. A great man is always willing to be little. Whilst he sits in a cushion of advantages, he goes to sleep. When he is pushed, tormented, defeated, he has a chance to learn something. He has been put on his wits. On his manhood, he has gained facts, learned his ignorance, is cured of the insanity of conceit, has got moderation and real skill. The wise man throws himself on the side of his assailants. It is more his interest than it is theirs to find his weak point. The wound cicatrizes the falls. The wound cicatrizes and falls off from him like a dead skin. And when they would triumph, lo, he has passed on invulnerable. Blame is safer than praise. I hate to be defended in a newspaper as long as all that is said against me. I feel a certain assurance of success, but as soon as honeyed words of praise are spoken for me, I feel as one that lies unprotected before his enemies. In general, every evil to which we do not succumb is a benefactor. As a Sandwich Islander believes, let me just repeat that. In general, every evil to which we do not succumb is a benefactor. As a Sandwich Islander believes that the strength and valor of the enemy he kills passes it into himself, so we gain the strength of the temptation we resist. The same guards which protect us from disaster, defect, and enmity defend us. If we will, from selfishness and fraud, bolts and bars are not the best of our institutions, nor is shrewdness in trade a mark of wisdom. Men suffer all their life long under the foolish superstition that they can be cheated. But it is impossible. But it is as impossible for a man to be cheated by anyone but himself as for a thing to be and not to be at the same time. There is a third silent party of all bargains. The nature and soul of things takes itself on the guarantee of the fulfillment of every contract, so that honest service cannot come to loss. If you serve an ungrateful master, serve him the more. Put God in your debt. Every stroke shall be repaid. The longer the payment is withholden, the better for you. For compound interest is the rate and usage of this exchequer. The history of persecution is a history of endeavors that cheat nature, to make water run uphill, to twist a rope of sand. It makes no difference whether the actors be many or one, a tyrant or a mob. A mob is a society of bodies voluntarily bereaving themselves of reason and traversing its work. The mob is man voluntarily descending to the nature of the beast. Its fit hour of activity is night. Its actions are insane, like its whole constitution. It persecutes a principle. It would whip a right. It would tar and feather justice by inflicting fire and outrage upon the houses and persons of those who have these. It resembles the prank of boys who run with fire engines to put out the ruddy aurora streaming to the stars. The inviolate spirit turns their spite against the wrongdoers. The martyr cannot be dishonored. Every lash inflicted is a tongue of fame. Every prison is a more illustrious abode. The martyr cannot be dishonored. Every lash inflicted is a tongue of fame. Every prison is a more illustrious abode. Every burnt book or house enlightens the world. Every suppressed or expunged word reverberates through the earth from side to side. Hours of sanity and consideration are always arriving to communities as to individuals when the truth is seen and the martyrs are justified. Thus do all things preach the indifferency of circumstances. The man is all. Everything has two sides, good and evil. Every advantage has its tax. I learned to be content, but the doctrine of compensation is not the doctrine of indifferency. The thoughtless say, on hearing these representations, what boots it to do well? There is one event to good and evil. If I gain any good, I must pay for it. If I lose any good, I gain some other. All actions are indifferent. There is a deeper fact in the soul than compensation, to wit, its own nature. The soul is not a compensation, but a life. The soul is on the oldest running sea of circumstance, whose waters ebb and flow with perfect balance. Lies the aboriginal abyss of real being, essence of God. It's not a relation or a part, but the whole. Being is a vast affirmative, excluding negation, self-balance, and swallowing up all relations, parts, and times within itself. Nature, truth, virtue are the influx from thence. Vice is the absence or departure of the same. Nothing, falsehood, may indeed stand as the great night or shade on which, as a background, the living universe paints itself forth. But no fact is begotten by it. It cannot work, for it is not. It cannot work any good. It cannot work any harm. It is harm in as much as it is worth. Not to be, than to be. We feel defrauded of the retribution due to evil acts, because the criminal adheres to his vice and contumacy, and does not come to a crisis or judgment anywhere in visible nature. There is no stunning confutation of his nonsense before men and angels. Has he therefore outwitted the law, inasmuch as he carries the malignity and the lie with him? He so far deceases from nature. In some manner there will be a demonstration of the wrong, to the understanding also. But should we not see it? This deadly destruction makes square the eternal account. Neither can it be said, on the other hand, that the gain of rectitude must be bought by any loss. There is no penalty to virtue, no penalty to wisdom. They are proper additions. They are proper additions of being. In a virtuous action, I properly am. In a virtuous act, I add to the world. I plant into deserts, conquered from chaos, and nothing, and see the darkness receding on the limits of the horizon. There can be no excess to love, none to knowledge, none to beauty. When these attributes are considered in the pure sense, the soul refuses limits and always affirms an optimism, never a pessimism. Man's life is a progress and not a station. His instinct is trust. Our instinct uses more and less. An application to man of the presence of the soul and not of its absence. The brave man is greater than the coward. The true, the benevolent, the wise is more a man and not less than the fool and knave. There is no tax on the good of virtue, for that is incoming of God Himself, or absolute existence, without any comparative. Material good has its tax, and if it came without desert or sweat, has no root in me, and the next wind will blow it away. But all the good of nature is the soul's, and may be had if paid for in nature's lawful coin, that is, by labor which the heart and the head allow. If no longer wish to meet a good I do not earn, for example, to find a pot of buried gold, knowing that it brings with it no burdens, I do not wish more external goods, neither possessions, nor honors, nor powers, nor persons. The gain is apparent, the tax is certain, but there is no tax on the knowledge that the compensation exists and that it is not desirable to dig up treasure. Herein I rejoice with a serene eternal peace. I contract the boundaries of possible mischief. I learn the wisdom of St. Bernard. Nothing can work me damage except myself. The harm that I sustain, I carry, but with me, and never am a real sufferer, but by my own fault. Let me repeat that. I learned the wisdom of St. Bernard. Quote, nothing can work me damage except myself. The harm that I sustain, I carry about with me, and never am a real sufferer, but by my own fault. End quote. And the nature of the soul is the compensation for the inequalities of condition. The radical tragedy of nature seems to be the distinction of more and less. How can less not feel the pain? How not feel indignation or malevolence towards more? Look at those who have less faculty, and one feels sad and knows not well what to make of it. He almost shuns their eye. He fears they will upbraid God. What should they do? Seems a great injustice. But see the facts nearly, and these mountainous inequalities vanish. Love reduces them as the sun melts the iceberg in the sea. The heart and soul of all men being one. The bitterness of his and mine ceases. He is mine. I am my brother, and my brother is me. If I feel overshadowed and outdone by great neighbors, I can yet love. I can still receive. And he that loveth maketh his own the grandeur he loves. Thereby I make the discovery that my brother is my guardian, acting for me with the friendliest designs, and the estate I so admired and envied is my own. It is the nature of the soul to appropriate all things. Let me repeat that, going back to the heart. The heart and soul of all men being one, this bitterness of his mind ceases. He is mine, I am my brother, and my brother is me. If I feel overshadowed and outdone by great neighbors, I can yet love, I can still receive, and by that loveth, maketh his own the grandeur he loves. I repeat that, I can still receive, and he that loveth, maketh his own the grandeur he loves. Thereby I make the discovery that my brother is my guardian, acting for me with the friendliest designs, and the state I so admired and envied in my own is my own. It is the nature of the soul to appropriate all things. Jesus and Shakespeare are fragments of the soul, and by love I conquer and incorporate them in my own conscious domain. His virtue is not that mine. His wit, if it cannot be made mine, it is not wit. Such is also the natural history of calamity. The changes which break up at short intervals the prosperity of men are advertisements of a nature whose law is growth. Every soul is by this intrinsic necessity quitting its whole system of things, its friends and home and laws and faith. As a shellfish crawls out of its beautiful but stony case, because it no longer admits of its growth and slowly forms a new house in proportion to the vigor of the individual, these revolutions are frequent until in some happy mind they are incessant and all worldly relations hang very loosely about him, becoming as it were a transparent fluid membrane through which the living form is seen, and not as in most men our indurated heterogeneous fabric of many dates and no settled character, in which the man is imprisoned, then there can be enlargement, and the man of the day scarcely recognizes the man of yesterday. And such should be the outward biography of man in time, a putting off of dead circumstances day by day, as he renews his raiment day by day, but to us in our lapsed estate, resting, not advancing, resisting, not cooperating with divine expansion, the growth comes by shocks. We cannot part with our friends. We cannot let our angels go. We do not see that they only go out, that archangels may come in. We are idolaters of the old. We do not believe in the riches of the soul. In its proper eternity and omnipresence, we do not believe there is any force in day-to-day rival or recreate that beautiful yesterday. We linger in the ruins of the old tent, where once we had bread and shelter and organs, nor believe that the spirit can feed, cover, and nerve us again. We cannot again find aught so dear, so sweet, so graceful, but we sit and weep in vain. The voice of the Almighty saith, up and onward forever. We cannot stay amid the ruins, neither will we rely on the new. And so we walk ever with reverted eyes, like the monsters who look backwards. And yet the compensations of calamity are made apparent to the understanding also. After long intervals of time, a fever, a mutilation, a cruel disappointment, a loss of wealth, a loss of friends, seems at the moment unpaid loss and unpayable. But the short years reveal the deep remedial force that underlies all facts. The death of a dear friend, wife, brother, lover, which seemed nothing but privation, somewhat later assumes the aspect of a guide or genius, for it commonly operates revolutions in our way of life, terminates an epoch of infancy, or of youth which was waiting to be closed, breaks up a wonted occupation, or a household, or style of living, and allows the formation of new ones more friendly to the growth of character. It permits or constrains the formation of new acquaintances and the reception of new influences that prove of the first importance to the next years. And the man or woman would have remained a sunny garden flower, with no room for its roots and too much sunshine for its head by the falling of the walls, and the neglect of the gardener is made the banyan of the forest, yielding shade and through too wide neighborhoods of men. Spiritual laws. We are now on page, I believe it's page 186, but the pages do tend to differ. As an actual book, it has different pages. Spiritual laws. The living heaven by thy prayers respect. House at once an architect, acquiring the man's rejected hours, builds therewith eternal towers. Soul and self-commanded works, fears not undermining days, grows by decays, and by the famous might that lurks, and reaction and recoil, makes flame to freeze and ice to boil, forging through swart arms of offense, the silver seat of innocence. When the act of reflection takes place in the mind, one second, let me just see what the name of this book is. Spiritual Laws, okay? When the act of reflection takes place in the mind, when we look at ourselves in the light of thought, we discover that our life is embosomed in beauty. Behind us as we go, all things assume pleasing forms, as clouds do far off. Not only things familiar and stale, but even the tragic and terrible are comely as they take their place in the pictures of memory. The riverbank, the weed at the waterside, the old house, the foolish person, however neglected, in the passing have a grace in the past. Even the corpse that has lain in the chambers has added a solemn ornament to the house. The soul would not know either deformity or pain. If in the hours of clear reason we should speak the severest truth, we shall say that we have never made a sacrifice. In these hours, the mind seems so great that nothing can be taken from us that seems much. All loss, all pain is particular. The universe remains to the hurt unhurt. Neither vexations nor calamities abate our trust. No man ever stated his griefs as lightly as he might. Allow for exaggeration in the most patient and sorely ridden hack that ever was driven. For it is only the finite that has wrought and suffered. The infinite lies stretched in smiling repose. Intellectual life may be kept clean and healthful if man will live the life of nature and not import into his mind difficulties which are none of his. No man need be perplexed in his speculations. Let him do and say what strictly belongs to him. And though very ignorant of books, his nature shall not yield him any intellectual obstructions and doubts. Our young people are diseased with the theological problems of original sin, origin of evil, predestination, and the like. These never presented a practical difficulty to any man, never darkened across any man's road who did not go out of his way to seek them. These are the soul's mumps and measles and whooping coughs, and those who have not caught them cannot describe their health or prescribe the cure. A simple mind will not know these enemies. It is quite another thing that he should be able to give account of his faith and expound to another the theory of his self-union and freedom. This requires rare gifts. Without the self-knowledge, there may be a Sylvian strength and integrity, that which he is, quote, a few strong instincts and a few plain rules, end quote, suffices. My will never gave the images in my mind the rank they now take. The regular course of studies, the years of academical and professional education, have not yielded me better facts than some idle books under the bench of the Latin school. What we do not call education is more precious than that which we call so. We form no guess at the time of receiving a thought of its comparative value. and education often wastes its effort and attempts to thwart and balk this natural magnetism, which is sure to select what belongs to it. In like manner, our moral nature is vitiated by any reference of our will. People represent a virtue as a struggle, and take to themselves great ears upon their attainments. And the question is everywhere vexed when a noble nature is commended, whether the man is not better who strives with temptation, but there is no merit in the matter. Either God is there or he is not there. We love characters in proportion as they are impulsive and spontaneous. Less a man thinks or knows about his virtues, the better we like him. Timberland victories are the best victories, which ran and flowed like Homer's verses. Plutarch said, when we see a soul whose acts are all regal, graceful, and pleasant as roses, we must thank God that such things can be and are, and not turn sourly on the angel and say, Crump is a better man with his grunting resistance to all his native devils. No less conspicuous is the preponderance of nature over will in all practical life. There is less intention in history than we ascribe to it. We impute deep-laid, far-sighted plans to Caesar and Napoleon, but the pest of their power was in nature, not in them. Many of the extraordinary success in their honest moments have always sung, not unto us, not unto us. According to the faith of their times, they have built altars to fortune, or to destiny, or to St. Julian. The sources lay in their parallelism to the course of thought, which found in them an unobstructed channel, and the wonders of what they were the visible conductors seemed to the eye their deed. Did the wise generate the galvanism? It is even true that there was less in them on which they could reflect than another. As the virtue of a pipe is to be smooth and hollow, that which externally seemed will and immovableness was willingness and self-annihilation. Could Shakespeare give a theory of Shakespeare? Could ever a man of prodigious mathematical genius convey to others any insight into his methods? If he could communicate that secret, it would instantly lose its exaggerated value, blending with the daylight and the vital energy, the power to stand and to go. The lessons forcibly taught by these observations that our life might be much easier and simpler than we make it, that the world might be a happier place than it is, that there is no need of struggles, convulsions, and despairs, of the wringing of the hands and the gnashing of the teeth, that we must create our own evils. We interfere with the optimism of nature. For whenever we get this vantage ground of the past, or of a wiser mind in the present, we're able to discern that we are begirt with laws which execute themselves. The face of external nature teaches the same lesson. Nature will not have us fret and fume. She does not like our benevolence, or our learning much better than she likes our frauds and wars. When we come out of the caucus, or the bank, or the abolition convention, or the temperance meeting, or the transcendental club, in the fields and woods, she says to us, so hot, my little sir. We are full of mechanical actions. We must needs intermeddle and have things in our own way, until the sacrifices and virtues of society are odious. Love should make joy, but our benevolence is unhappy. Our Sunday school and churches and pauper societies are yokes to the neck. We pain ourselves to please nobody. There are natural ways of arriving at the same ends at which these aim, but do not arrive. Why should all virtue work in one and the same way? Why should all give dollars? It is very inconvenient to us, country folk, and we do not think any good will come of it. We have not dollars, merchants have. Let them give them. Farmers will give corn, poets will sing, women will sew, laborers will lend a hand, the children will bring flowers. And why drag this dead weight of a Sunday school over the whole Christendom? It is natural and beautiful that childhood should it is natural and beautiful that childhood should inquire and maturity should teach, but it is time enough to answer questions when they are asked. Do not shut up the young people against their will in a pew and force the children to ask them questions for an hour against their will. If we look wider, things are all alike. Laws and letters and creeds and modes of living seem a travesty of truth. Our society is encumbered by ponderous machinery, which resembles the endless aqueducts which the Romans built over hill and dale, and which are superseded by the discovery of the law that water rises to the level of its source. It is a Chinese wall which any nimble Tartar can leap over. It is a standing army, not so good as a peace. It is a graduated, titled, richly appointed empire, quite superfluous when town meetings are found to answer just as well. Let us draw a lesson from nature, which always works by short ways. When the fruit is ripe, it falls. When the fruit is dispatched, the leaf falls. The circuit of the waters is mere falling. The walking of man and all animals is a falling forward. All our manual labor and works of strength, as prying, splitting, digging, rowing, and so forth, are done by dint of continual falling. And the globe earth, moon, comet, sun, star, fall forever and ever. The simplicity of the universe is very different from the simplicity of a machine. He who sees moral nature out and thoroughly knows how knowledge is acquired and character formed as a pedant. The simplicity of nature is not that which may be the simplicity of nature is not that which may easily be read, but is inexhaustible. The last analysis can no wise be made. We judge of a man's wisdom by his hope, knowing that the perception of the inexhaustibleness of nature is an immoral youth. The wild fertility of nature is felt in comparing our rigid names and reputations with our fluid consciousness. We pass in the world for sex in schools, for erudition and piety, and we are all the time jejune babies. One sees very well how Pyrrhonism grew up. Every man sees that he is that middle point where everything may be affirmed and denied with equal reason. He is old, he is young, he is very wise, he is altogether ignorant. He hears and feels what you say of the seraphim and of the tin peddler. There is no permanent wise man except the figment of the Stoics. We side with the hero as we read or paint against the coward and the robber. But we have been ourselves that coward and robber, and shall begin not in low circumstance, but in comparison with the grandeurs possible to the soul. A little consideration of what takes place around us every day would show us that a higher law than that of our will regulates events, that our painful labors are unnecessary and fruitless, that only in our easy, simple, spontaneous action are we strong, And by contenting ourselves with obedience, we become divine. Belief and love. A believing love will relieve us of a vast load of care. Oh, my brothers, God exists. There is a soul at the center of nature and over the will of every man, so that none of us can wrong the universe. It has so infused its strong enchantment into nature that we prosper when we accept its advice, and when we struggle to wound its creatures, our hands are glued to our sides, or they beat our own breasts. The whole course of things goes to teach us faith. We need only obey there's guidance for each of us, and by lowly listening we shall hear the right word. Why need you choose so painfully your place in occupation and associates and modes of action and of entertainment? Certainly there is a possible right view that precludes the need of balance and willful election. For there is a reality of a place and congenial duties. Place yourself in the middle of the stream of power and wisdom which animates all whom it floats, and you are without effort impelled to choose to right and a perfect contentment. Then you put all gainsayers in the room. Then you are the world, the measure of right, of truth, of beauty. If we would not be marplots with our miserable interferences, the work to society, letters, art, science, religion of men would go on far better than now. And the heaven predicted from the beginning of the world, still predicted from the bottom of the heart, would organize itself, as do now the rose and the air and the sun. We're going to finish here on page 198. I think it's page 198 I just read. Well, no, it's not. It's actually 196. No, 195. It's a little confusing. But in any case, I think it's 195. We shall continue on the next video. I want to thank you for taking your time out to read with me and listen. Very kind of you. Please do share your comments, your thoughts, your feedback is very important to me. What do you feel about these ideas in spirituality? And what are your thoughts about this whole video, my reading style? I look forward to seeing your comments. And I also look forward to seeing your feedback. Constructive criticism goes far. Subscribe if you haven't already. Smash the like button. I look forward to hearing from you. Have a lovely day. Remember, you are light. You are beautiful. I love you. Take care.